And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 107th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, September 24th, 2019, where I'm your host, Noah Freeman. On the docket for tonight, we will recap the UConn game, where Indiana defeated Connecticut, 38-3 this past weekend on Saturday in Bloomington, and we kind of will segue that into basically what can we make of this team so far. The Hoosiers have played 4 games so far, 3 against quote unquote cupcake opponents and 1 against a really hard team. So there hasn't been an opponent that Indiana has faced that has been more on their level. So basically, what can we take away from the first 4 games, which is a third of the season already? Before we will preview the Michigan State game this Saturday against the Hoosiers' second top 25 team on the season. Here with me tonight, all 3 of us are back together after our interview with Jordan Geronimo last week, which was awesome, by the way. But Matt, how are you doing since you weren't able to? You were able to be on the podcast last week, but then you weren't able to be on the podcast.
That's correct. I was busy handling some family matters. But anyways, it's great to be back. I always missed it. That Geronimo interview was extremely interesting, of course, as always. All of our interviews are great. But it's always nice to see where the future of the basketball program goes, and he looks like he's going to be a fun Hoosier to watch for the future. So I'm excited. But yeah, other than that, it's hot here in Florida. I'm melting, and I'm waiting for fall to come, if that's even a season anymore.
As I was telling Matt, it was 70 degrees here, and I think it was probably 70 degrees in Bloomington as well, Nathan. But Nathan, how are you doing in the only one of us 3 that again had another victory for their NFL team this week, when both Matt and I are crying sad tears?
The Lions.
Well, to be honest, I don't know how frequently I can wear my Mitch Trubisky shirt, but he was good yesterday. I'll tip my cap to him yesterday. If he has another 3-touchdown game on Sunday against Minnesota, I think a lot of people would be more impressed by that. But as far as life here, it's great. IU football came off a pretty comfortable win on Saturday, and it's Big Ten season now. It's fun. It's fun stuff. Looking forward to seeing how they do against a lot of really good teams.
I'll reiterate, Nathan said Mitch Trubisky shirt. He did not pay money for a jersey just yet. I guess we'll have to see. The jury's still out to see if it should be a jersey worthy. But
although Indiana, to be fair, I think my last Bears jersey was Rex Grossman, so it's been a while.
Okay.
Oh my. Bloomington's pride and joy.
And maybe you should just go on the Khalil Mack train and then go from there. But let's get into some Indiana football talk, not relative to Indiana football, close to Indiana. But like we said, 38-3, Indiana beat the Connecticut Huskies this past weekend on Saturday in Bloomington. I find myself thinking, just because so basically, this was more or less the same outcome as the Eastern Illinois game, very wide margin of victory, and I found myself definitely not as high up after this game as the Eastern Illinois game, but I did have to kind of pull myself back and say, well, what did we say at the Eastern Illinois game? We said that the Hoosiers needed to go out and just take care of business, and technically that's what they did. They won 38-3, a wide margin of victory. They definitely crushed the over against UConn, the very large over that they had against the team in a very long time, and they won 38-3 again. 3 points is really good no matter what team they're playing. So we'll get into specifics, but let's hear Matt's thoughts overall. What did you think coming out of this game? Were you high on some of the stuff you saw? Were you still in the wait and see mode, or were you still kind of what I had, having just some reservations after some of the play on the field?
I think this game has to be a loss for us, honestly.
Yeah.
If everything is considered, like losing Coy Cronk is a big blow to the offensive line and to the season, really, because he's one of our best players that we have on the offensive side of the ball. So when you take that into account and the fact that we're coming off of an extremely disappointing Ohio State game, I said at the beginning of the season, I think we're going to be a 4 or 5 win team, but this is going to be one of the better teams that Indiana's had in the last 20 years. It just happens to be that the rest of college football is incredibly great. Like the rest of the teams in our division are incredible. So coming out of this game, I'm going, we have some promise for the future, but our present is kind of, just meh, really. It's like when looking in the future, like looking to this next game that's coming up, it's kind of like, okay, look, we beat the crap out of Connecticut, but UConn's like one of the worst teams in Division I football, right? Like they're awful in the FBS. They're one of the worst teams, if not the worst team. So we should beat a team like this 38-3. And then we lost our best offensive lineman. And Peyton Ramsey, even though he's 23 for 27, is still our starting quarterback right now. And Michael Penix is still not back from injuries. So like I'm trying to be positive, but it's really hard to look at this game and come out with a positive attitude, even though it was a 38-3 final score. So that's my thoughts on the game.
You said you talked about how this game was kind of a loss, and I even said in our back channels that regardless of the outcome of this game, whatever the score ends up being, I think this is a loss. And you mentioned it right because of Coy Cronk, which we'll dive into in a second more specifically. But I think it was Cody or one of you two agreed with me that it's technically it's a win on the record books, but it wasn't necessarily the best day to be an Indiana Hoosier fan. But Nathan, what were your overall thoughts? Were you at the game this past weekend? I forget.
Yeah, I was there, and just so people understand, Coy Cronk isn't just the starting left tackle for Indiana. He's a captain, and he's a guy that a lot of IU football insiders would say is maybe the most important guy on the team outside of the quarterback. Personally, I feel like the quarterback runs the show just because that's the nature of the position. But outside of that, Coy Cronk was this team's most important player, and now he's not on IU's team anymore. Because of the leg injury. But look, let's be honest. Every team deals with injuries, and one thing Tom Allen preached during the media days and during the preseason was that he is more comfortable with this team's depth than previous seasons. So it's going to be tested now. And hey, we're going to talk about Michigan State later. They're going through some injuries, yet they went into Northwestern last week and won by 3 touchdowns. So all in all, I do want to make sure we understand, like, IU did win by 35, and we all understandably are just kind of looking past it. And I think that's sort of a testament to where Tom Allen has this program. Like, they're able to smash the bad teams.
Yeah.
But now the question is, hey, what do you do against Michigan State, especially without one of your best players in Coy Cronk?
Yeah. And I will say, now, I definitely think UConn is at the bottom. But, Matt, they're 124th, not 130th. So they're not the worst.
Sorry.
In the FBS.
My bad.
Or at least S&P Plus says 124th. But let's get into Coy Cronk a little bit. I think it's just a devastating loss. If you listen to Tom Allen talk about Coy Cronk in the post-game press conference, if you just heard that little snippet, you could tell how much it meant to the team. The announcers on air when it was happening, they said you usually don't see an entire team go up to the player when he's about to leaving the field, because just he means so much to the team. And you could tell, even if they could replace his talent, what Nathan said, you can't really replace just what he means on the field for leadership style, what he means off the field, the kind of person he is. I will say, maybe hopefully a good sliver of news from all of this that we might have a little bit of hope for, and something slightly positive to take away from this is now that he is eligible potentially for a medical red shirt. So if that is what he wanted to do, he could potentially come back next year, which we talked about. Having 3 senior offensive linemen, that they might need that kind of reinforcement next year with the offensive line. Definitely having a lot of promise with the recruits they got, like Matthew Bedford, but needing some senior leadership. So maybe that's just one small thing, but definitely doesn't compare to losing someone like him, losing a senior more or less who has NFL aspirations and really wanted to show scouts this year that he was someone that could come in and do the dirty work and potentially get drafted, because you never know. We never thought Wes Martin would get drafted, let alone in the 4th round, so you had no idea where Coy Cronk might be on scouting reports, and now we don't get to know where he is, and scouts don't get to see him. So maybe we'll see him next year, maybe we won't. But let's talk a little bit about the offensive line. We're replacing him. Hopefully, they did 2 things this past game when they replaced him. They replaced him first, where they moved Caleb Jones back over, and they had what was it, Lavondre Love? Am I remembering that correctly? Come in, and then what was it? A 3rd quarter-ish, I think, somewhere around there. Definitely in the second half, they moved Caleb Jones back over, and they brought Matthew Bedford in. Now, it was the end of the game. It was UConn defense getting tired. I don't know if they were subbing people in or not, but the offensive line definitely looked better with Matthew Bedford in and Caleb Jones on one side compared to basically two people having new positions. Do you agree, Nathan? And do you think that's how maybe Indiana should go this week with how to replace Coy Cronk?
No, I don't agree, because at the end of the day, Bedford is still a true freshman. And Tom Allen said, one of the things he said after the game last week against UConn was that Bedford is going to play left tackle. He's not going to switch back and forth between left and right. And he also said that Coy Cronk was a rarity. Very few players can step in their true freshman year and do a good job in that left tackle position. So I don't think that's the way IU is going to go on Saturday, at least to start off with. I think it will be that alignment we saw earlier in the UConn game with Caleb Jones at left tackle, the senior Devondre Love at right tackle, and that at least gives IU some experience. Remember, if Michael Penix plays, it's Love, the senior, who's going to be protecting his blind side, being the right tackle. So Penix, who's a left-handed quarterback, won't be able to see the pass rush coming from his right side. So for those reasons, I think Bedford will start the game on the sidelines. But with that said, Tom Allen made it very clear the red shirt is gone for Bedford. They're not going to sit him this year, especially now that they got confirmation that Coy Cronk is out for the season. Mm-hmm. Bedford will play. It's just a matter of, okay, what exactly is his role? And I'll tell you this, if Caleb Jones struggles at left tackle or Devondre Love struggles at right tackle, you will see Bedford in the game. And, well, even if he's a true freshman, you got to go with what you have.
Yeah, I agree and disagree. I think this is something that the coaches are going to have to see in practice. I could see both ways, just because when you move Caleb Jones over, basically now you have two people in two new positions. Even though one of them is still from the offensive line and one of them is completely new, you still have people at positions they haven't been practicing recently. So you're really replacing two people more or less compared to just one. And you could definitely tell Matthew Bedford had some struggles out there. You could tell some of even UConn was getting to him, and we're gonna get into the defensive line that Michigan State has, which is crazy good. They're one of the best in the nation, but man, that's going to be something hard. And I think we're just going to have to trust the coaches if the lineup comes out where Caleb Jones is switched and we got Love in there, or we've got Caleb Jones back on the right, protecting, like you said, which is another key point. If Penix is in, protecting Penix's blind side, when you've got Bedford in there at the left tackle, which is not the blind side. It just depends. So, Matt, I want to get your thoughts on that real quick, because this is a big topic. The O-line is something that we haven't even gotten into, that they haven't been playing very well recently, let alone just losing the talent of Coy Cronk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big supporter of giving youth a chance, and especially in football. But with that said, I think next week, like you said, going against Michigan State, away game against one of the best defensive lines in the country, I think putting Matthew Bedford in there in that spot is unrealistic and asking way too much of him as a freshman. Like a home game against Maryland or a home game against Rutgers would be a lot better shot of, okay, start, let's see what you got. Not an away game at MSU. That's putting way too much in the hands of a freshman. But that being said, I would like to see him get more playing time, because look, you got a freshman, as you said, he's a left tackle, right? Play him at left tackle. A sophomore running back, when our starting QB is healthy, he's a freshman. Like that's a basic core that you can build around. That is all sophomores, freshmen. Like that's great. And then you look at the wide receivers. You have people like David Ellis, who you can look at and go, he's young. Ty Freifogel, whatnot. Like all these guys are young. We're giving young people a chance to play, and that's a really good recruiting pitch as well in the upcoming classes. So, like, I'm always love to give youth a chance, but I just don't think that this weekend at Michigan State is that chance. Maybe later game down the line, be a better chance for him.
If there's one position in the entire on the entire field, it's the offensive line that usually you don't see a lot of freshmen, let alone sophomores, are on the field. Even the defensive line, you see some freshmen get in there sometimes, but offensive line, you usually a lot of juniors and seniors, rarity of the sophomores. But if there's one guy, and this is probably why they might have wanted to give Bedford some looks at the end of the game last week to see if he could even hold his own just against another team other than Indiana in practice. If there's one kid that might have the potential potential to even hold some water, it's Matthew Bedford. I don't remember who said this and who I can credit this to, who even talked about this scout saying this, but there was someone that said Matthew Bedford is a sure NFL talent offensive lineman. And it wasn't even that it was like, oh, he probably could develop. He was saying that he was almost 100% sure that Matthew Bedford will be in the NFL 4, 5, 6 years from now. So if there's one kid that definitely has potential, it's Matthew Bedford. And I guess we'll have to see, because getting into the running game, at least this week, there was a lot more emphasis on the running game, which I like to see. Like to see you at least game planning and at least trying it more, but I still don't think it was working as much as Hoosier fans would have liked. Because, Stevie Scott was getting, if you actually look at his averages per carry, I'll pull it up real quick. It was better than you might have thought. 4.6. So actually, 4.6 is very good. Actually, it's pretty good, but it didn't seem like it when you were going onto the field. And I think this is definitely an area for concern, because we've seen Stevie Scott. He's the workhorse, but then after him, I don't think the coaching staff even knows who they want to play, because you see Samson James, then you see Ronnie Walker in for like 1 or 2 plays, and it's random, and we've forgotten about Cole Guest completely, basically. So Nathan, we're going to talk about stuff we need to wait and see, stuff we're worried about, and stuff we are 100% sure are in the positive. Is the running game, you think, something that we are definitely concerned about regardless of the opponent?
Yeah, it is. And I will say this, though. Whatever happened in the UConn game, you can kind of throw that in the trash can, simply because you had the Kronk injury that happened in the first quarter. And frankly, when IU jumped out to what was about a 14-3 or 21-3 lead, you knew early on that the Hoosiers were going to go on and win that game. And furthermore, Tom Allen and Kalen DeBoer, they weren't going to put a lot of complex stuff on film for Big Ten coaches to look at. So, all said and done, that UConn game, really, you can't extrapolate much. But when you look back at the first couple of games this year, the running game is a big concern. And now you have an offensive lineman getting hurt. I think IU's going to have to resort to some trickery as far as getting rushing yards. They're going to have to go with maybe some jet sweeps, some end around, some deception, some option looks. There is a lot of speed and a lot of talent in this IU backfield. You mentioned James and you mentioned Walker. They're very capable, talented players. They're both young, but of course Stevie Scott is sort of the brute workhorse in the backfield, and even he's still a sophomore. So there's a lot of youth, a lot of talent. It is up to Kalen DeBoer and Mike Hart, the running backs coach, to find the correct mix and see how to get that going, while also using some of those faster receivers like maybe Wap Fillier or David Ellis, like we saw in some perimeter looks. But without question, the run game is the area of the offense where right now I have the biggest concern, and I don't really think it's going to get fixed for at least another couple of weeks. That bye week might be helpful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great points, especially with how you lose Coy Cronk and basically your entire running game plan is out the window because you've got 2 people in new positions, and that's just where it's going to go. And you've got you don't want to show too much stuff. You just want to run a lot of vanilla things and see if it can work. And it did, because actually I was looking at it. Stevie Scott didn't inflate his average by getting one really long run. His longest run was only 10 yards, which in a way is also a little concerning, because Stevie Scott really hasn't broken out for a long run yet. And Indiana running offense likes to really thrive on those. Every once in a while you get a 20, 30-yard run. But a lot of good points that you had there. Matt, is that kind of what you've been seeing with the running game? And of course, I like, again, what Nathan said. It's not going to be fixed, especially not this week. This week it's going to be a huge struggle, but maybe looking past Michigan State, maybe past the bye weekend, what do you think of this running game?
Look, I think the faster we get back Mike Penix, the better. I think our running game looked a lot better with him in there, because he can run the run-pass option, and you have to respect the pass more than you do with Ramsey. Like, Ramsey's an okay quarterback. Like, he's an okay quarterback at best, but Mike Penix can be special, and people know that. He's got the arm talent to make any throw on the field, and so you have to respect that at all times, and that makes that play action a lot more actiony, for lack of for more of a punt, right? Like like with Peyton Ramsey, it's kind of like, oh, is he going to throw the ball 5 yards, run it for 5 yards, or hand it off to the running back? Like, I will just bank on him like giving it to the running back for the easy, 3-yard run, and you can stack the box. So I think, once we get Mike Penix back, we get the full offense back and the flow of things, I think the running game is not something we're going to have to worry about too much. Against the likes of Michigan State and the likes of Michigan, teams that are bigger than us, it's always going to be an issue. It's always going to be a problem just because they're bigger, faster, stronger athletes than what we have. And that's always going to be tough sledding. But with Mike Penix, it makes it just that much little easier because you have to respect the pass. So getting Penix back will really help the running game.
Now, the one thing I will say about that, though, is just because your run game doesn't go for 10 yards a carry or whatever against Michigan State doesn't mean you can completely abandon it.
No, absolutely.
You definitely have to keep Michigan State's defense, which is unbelievably good. You have to keep them honest, even if it means getting a couple yards a carry, setting up those second and mediums, those third and shorts. That's going to be important for IU looking forward to Saturday because you can't just pass these guys.
We will win the Michigan State game if we rush for more than 3.5 yards a carry. If we go back to next week and we look at the stats and Stevie Scott has 3.5 or 4 yards a carry against Michigan State's defense, we will win the game because then we will have not a great pass running attack. Like when the games that we've lost, like we go back to the Ohio State game, we couldn't run for crap, like couldn't do anything. We basically abandoned the run at one point, just throwing the ball. If we can run the ball consistently, that'll keep the defenses on their toes and on their heels, and we'll keep marching on forward as an offense. So 3.5 yards a carry plus for Stevie Scott, and we get a W in East Lansing.
I'll add to that maybe just 100, 125 yards total on the ground from everyone will also be very good. But, not make or break, but adding to that, if we can get 100, 125, then that's going to be better than nothing. So let's. I don't want to talk too much about receiving / quarterback because this might change a bunch. The receivers kind of go hand in hand with the quarterback since the quarterback could potentially change. The one thing that I will say very fast is I don't know why it seems like the coaching staff still has a bubble around Peyton Ramsey. It seems like they always just want him to get like only have incomplete passes for only 3 or 4 incomplete passes the entire game. But let's move on from that. I mean, I think receiving, I think the one point we talked about things that we can set in stone that are really positive. I think Peyton Hendershot is a guy that we can really look for to contribute on this team. It's his 3rd straight game with the receiving touchdown. He's looked like a monster. Besides the very beginning of the game, his fumble, which hopefully he got out of his system for his entire career at Indiana. He's a beast. He goes up and gets balls without any worry of someone coming over the middle and hitting him. He can get long passes. He can block. He can do a lot of the work. And I talked about starting the Peyton Hendershot fan club and being the president of that. And I think everyone's going to start getting on board with that because he's a guy that's just been, especially like we've all talked about with DeBoer's offense and loving tight ends. Great find that we've been able to have. So do you guys agree? Are there any other receivers, Matt, that you want to highlight or just go on to the defense?
I mean, I think David Ellis has been a bit of a find as a freshman. I think he's looked great. If I have to highlight anything, it's a lack of targets for Nick Westbrook and Donovan Hale through the first 4 weeks of the season. Like, I feel like Nick Westbrook was brought up to be this great receiver and he's going to get all these catches and he's going to catch all these touchdowns. And he had one this week, but through 4 games, I feel like they've been an afterthought. And I thought they'd be a lot larger of a presence in the passing game than they have been. It's great that Ty Freifogel and Whop Phillier are getting a lot of targets. Like, I think they're excellent receivers as well. And like I said before going into the season, we have a fantastic receiving unit between Ty Freifogel, Whop Phillier, Peyton Hendershot, Donovan Hale, Nick Westbrook. Like, all these guys are great. Like, it's probably our deepest position at the field is our receivers and tight ends. But I feel like the touches are going to people that are great, but not superstars. And Nick Westbrook can be a superstar in college football if he wants to be. Like, he is a game-changing wide receiver, and we should get the ball in his hands more.
Yep. I think that's going to be more of a wait and see just because first we've had 2 games with Peyton Ramsey under under center for that. So not necessarily sure who they're going to target. You could also put attention to they are the best receivers, so you've got the best cornerbacks covering them, and you also never know. Maybe Ramsey develop more of since again Peyton Ramsey has usually been at least the past a couple months been working with the second team, and maybe more of the second team has had Freifogel and Watt Philly around there, so he's developed more of a chemistry with them. You never know, a bunch of things. I guess it's a wait and see, but yeah, I liked all those comments because I mean, to your point, Donovan Hale 9 receptions, Nick Westbrook 8 receptions in 4 games, so something
good enough.
Also, don't forget, there is an adjustment process going on with the new offensive coordinator.
Yep.
I fully expect Westbrook and Hale to be a key part of this offense in Big Ten play as early as Saturday because, the one area where Michigan State's defense might be a little bit vulnerable is in the secondary. So don't be surprised if Westbrook and Hale have a good game. Maybe one or the other at least go off. Also, Noah, you were talking about Hendershot. I found it funny that he's already eclipsed his 2018 totals in 4 weeks this season.
Yeah.
Receptions, yards, I think touchdowns as well. He's eclipsed all of what he did last year under Mike DeBoer this year in 4 games under Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, he's an NFL tight end.
And if you remember me last year, I was excited about Peyton Hendershot last year.
Yeah.
I was excited about him the whole year. Matt was there the whole year with me. I was excited about him all of last year.
He's
now
good.
maybe you guys can start getting on my hype train with me. I love Peyton
Get on the
Hendershot.
hype train.
There we go.
Well, if you weren't on his hype train after his 4-catch, 70-yard and touchdown performance against Ohio State a couple of weeks ago, I really don't know what to tell you. The one thing I'm hoping now is with Kronk out, hopefully they can still have Hendershot go out in pass catching routes. Hopefully he doesn't have to stay in as a blocker, which might be necessary with the injury.
Great point. Hendershot, by the way, leads the team in receptions and yards and touchdowns. Interesting fact.
He's having a good year.
Yes, he is. All right, let's go to the defense. I think let's get the sore subject out of the way, and a question that we actually got from who was it? What was it? Tom on Facebook. He asked 2 questions. One, what we actually talked about this a little bit already. Tom on Facebook, are we going to be able to run against any team with a decent defense? We kind of touched on that a little bit. Just to reiterate, I think Matt and Nathan both said maybe in a couple weeks, definitely not this weekend. We'll have to see. The jury's still out. Let's see how the offensive line also develops. So maybe. Right now, I'm leaning more towards no, but maybe we'll see how it develops. It is just the first month of the season. Now, the next question he asked is, what do you think is causing the tackling issues? And we were talking about this a little bit in the back channels too. And honestly, I have no idea. I don't know if you guys have even a little bit of a clue, but first, you've got Tom Allen as defensive coordinator into head coach, the guy that turned this entire defense around in literally 1 season. You've got now he gave the reins to his defensive coordinator position to Kane Walmack, to where he's got less time to think about it. But also it's that's what he grew up doing basically as a coach, is defense. And the tackling has not changed. The way the players are lunging at the opposing players has not changed. They're still kind of lunging with their head almost down, almost dangerously at times. And if they try and tackle, it's a lot of arm tackling. And honestly, do either of you, will start with Nathan first, have any clue at what is going on with the tackling in this defense?
You asked a question. I think my answer is that they just didn't practice it before the season started. I mean, you see it in the NFL now. I watched the Bears Redskins game yesterday, and both teams struggled in that area. It's just even the great Bears defense, and they were great.
Bears,
even there, the NFL defenses right now are struggling tackling because, simply put, there's no contact in these practices before the season starts, or even in season. I think that's what it is. As the weeks go by, I expect IU to get better in this department. But if they don't, then that's going to be the Achilles heel of this defense, because if they can't tackle, you're going to see, not forget Ohio State, you're going to see Maryland and Rutgers and Purdue reel off big plays against these guys. Then IU won't get to that 6-win mark that a lot of fans want to see.
If they don't fix it, I think maybe and I literally mean maybe Rutgers and no one else. They will not be anyone else on their schedule. They will be that 4-win team, maybe even 3-win team if they don't fix that.
I told you. Yeah, I mean, look, it's been the issue here. Like, I don't know. This is not a new thing. We've always had one guy on the defense. Like, whether it's T. Gray Scales, right? He was the guy you always count on was going to get the tackle. Now I look at this team and I go down the list and I go, Raekwon Jones, maybe?
Supposed to be, at least.
Supposed to be? Like, I looked at where's Jonathan Crawford? Like, is he, these guys, I don't count on them to get the tackles anymore. It's just be like, okay, we got a guy running, he's free with 5 yards, space in between him and the next defender. I'm like, hey, these guys are going to go lunge for an arm tackle and it's going to break for like a 25-yard gain. Like, I just automatically know this is going to happen. Wrapping up is non-existent on this team right now. So between this and the running game, we can't win any close football game if we're not going to do that. There's not one team on earth
or any game almost.
Yeah, there's
left.
Look, ask Washington State about it, right? They lost to UCLA this weekend. 67, 63, 60. Yeah. That's what happens when you can't run the ball. You only throw at Mike Leach, and then your defense just doesn't wrap up any tackles. That is what happens. You can score 63 points in a game and lose. You throw for 9 touchdown passes and lose a game. That happened this weekend. I watched the whole thing.
Yeah, because they also came back from down 30 points. Basically,
it was like 49-13.
At halftime,
UCLA came back and won. It was not even. It was like halfway through the third quarter they came back. Like a Indiana versus Rutgers 2015 level catastrophe. I know. Sorry, I brought that up again. Anyways.
Look, let's move on from that, just because I think it's
depressing to talk about.
That's what I mean. That's
really an issue. Like, if we can't fix it, this team is gonna implode. So it's not
right good. Now that part is so bad that I think we just need to move on from that part specifically. And another part that I at least had a sigh of relief. I think we were talking in the back channels, and I was I think it seemed like I was the only one going crazy, but I'm like, why aren't we getting a turnover against all of these teams? We had one turnover. This was right before the pick six, but it was like why aren't we getting turnovers against these cupcake teams? And thank goodness that we got a pick six finally. I think it's also just to get those turnover juices flowing that they can finally hopefully start getting maybe one-ish a game or something, because defense also isn't going to be able to cut it if they can't get a turnover-ish a game, because I'm just glad that they got that.
Well, and I think as far as that goes too, I think there's a clear distinction between sort of takeaways and forcing turnovers. Tom Allen constantly preaches takeaways where the defense really makes a big play to rake the ball away or to go out and catch the football from the quarterback. That interception that Cam Jones had, I mean, I'm glad that, for his sake, that he was able to catch the ball and run it in for a touchdown. It was a nice catch. It was a one-handed grab. But the UConn quarterback basically gift wrapped it to him. It wasn't like, it was a heroic, endeavor by Cam Jones. So maybe, and to their credit, having seen every game that IU's played to the point, they're trying, but trying only gets you so far. They have to deliver in this area against the Michigan State team that could, be vulnerable as far as giving the ball up. So you have to keep raking at the football. You have to gang tackle. The first couple of guys control the guy. Third guy tries raking it out. Or as far as the secondary goes, if the quarterback maybe varies a little bit in his accuracy, you pounce on those opportunities because IU's going to have to force a couple of turnovers. Those take Big Ten games. And if they do it, well, now all of a sudden, you're going to be more competitive and you might have a shot at some of these as wins.
Yep. All right. I'm just going to wrap up our special teams because it kind of goes with this too. And the rest of the defense is just, they need to fix the penalties. I hope it's just the first month, but a lot of these penalties need to get fixed because it's really going to cost them games, both on the punts mostly and some of the defensive penalties that they have. Hopefully they can clean that up. We'll circle around back to that if it continues to be a problem. But I want to move on to quickly, Nathan, who won the week this past week in IU sports before we move on.
Well, there was a lot that was going on this past weekend. I'm going to tip my hat first to the field hockey team here at IU, who recorded an upset win on Friday against Michigan State on the road in East Lansing. Wink, wink. The Hoosiers won 4-2. It was a fun game, close game, the first top 25 win for IU since 2017. So great job there by the field hockey squad, and then the volleyball team as well. They weren't ranked in the top 25 when the polls released this past Monday, but they just swept a 3-game series down in Tampa. They ran their record up to 11-2 on the season, a really good start to the non-conference because Steve Aird, the head coach, expected about 8 to 10 wins in the non-conference. Then they got 11, including a big top 25 upset win at Kentucky. So they're entering Big Ten season now. IU is receiving votes in the AVCA poll, but they haven't cracked the top 25 yet. If they win a couple of games this weekend against top 15 teams, then they'll be ranked. That's for sure.
Or one. They play number 7 Minnesota Friday and number 9 Wisconsin on Sunday. They've got a huge gauntlet. You talked about basketball gauntlet last January, but let's move on to quickly so we can preview Michigan State. So we talked about what to make of this Indiana team. We've kind of talked about that here and there, talking about the UConn game. But I want to get your opinions and your thoughts on, give me one positive thing that we probably know for sure, one negative thing that we probably know for sure, and then maybe 1 or 2 things that we 100% should wait and see on. I'll kick it off with positive. Peyton Hendershot, I think he's here to stay. I think we're going to see a lot of big games out of him. We need a lot of big games out of him, like both receiving and blocking, just like Nathan said, with losing Clay Kronk. Negative, I'm going to go the run game, at least for now. I think that's a negative for now, especially losing the offensive line. And then wait and see on, I'll put... let's wait and see on the quarterback, because I want to see what kind of things they do. And I mean wait and see as in Ramsey was serviceable last year, but I want to see like a good, not great, not decent, a good quarterback showing. So I'll put wait and see on that. Matt, positive, negative, wait and see.
I'm gonna change your positive a little bit. I'm gonna say skill positions. I think all of our skill positions on offense have been pretty great. I think the quarterback play has been somewhat subpar. Thanks to Ramsey, but if when Penix was in, I was a lot happier with who was getting targeted and who was getting the ball, and the plays that were being called. Negative, I'm gonna go with defense. I'm gonna go with tackling. I think the tackling has been an issue. I think we saw it rear its ugly head against Ohio State, especially not being able to tackle J.K. Dobbins, which has been an issue in the past. So it's not anything new. J.K. has done this before, but it reared its head in Ohio State. We saw it again this weekend against UConn. So that's it. And then for up in the air, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with the quarterback situation. Like I said, this season is, if Mike Penix is in, then we're a 6-win, 7-win team. If Ramsey's in, we're a 4 or 5-win team. So there you go.
Nathan, you can change or edit what we've said so far.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take that wait and see and make it my positive. I was really impressed by Michael Penix in the 2 games that he played. So assuming he's healthy, and the health is the question mark without a doubt, but when he comes back healthy, whether it's this year or next year down the road, I'm looking long-term here, Michael Penix is more than capable enough of leading IU to higher heights than they've seen recently. So just being at the games, watching how quickly the arm comes out of his hand, seeing him fit the ball in some tight spaces, and then, of course, the deep shots, like we saw the Nick Westbrook touchdown, and we've seen a couple other deep balls in those first 2 games. I really like what I'm seeing out of Michael Penix, especially considering, remember, you hurt his knee last year. It looks like that recovery went well. Something I'm concerned about is the offensive line. I'm very concerned. This is, it was an issue before the Coy Cronk injury. It's an issue now, and the defensive lines and pass rushers are only getting tougher. So this is where I look at. I'm a huge believer in that. You got to either have you've got to have your quarterback, and you've got to have guys that can protect the quarterback. And if you don't have one of the two, your ceiling is very limited. I'm not saying IU's offensive line is a lost cause yet, but it's definitely something they've got to focus on improving it as the year goes on.
Yes.
And as far as wait and see, I'm going to wait and see on the tackling. The tackling, to me, I think is a function of just not practicing it much in the summer, in the preseason, even during weekly practices between games. I'm not there, but I don't believe they have contact practices even during the season. So I'm thinking that they'll improve in that area as the season goes on. But again, I'm not sure. This is why I'm waiting and seeing, because if it is a weakness, well then they're really going to dig themselves into some deep holes in all these Big Ten games. Seriously, even the Rutgers game. In all honesty.
Yep. I'll clarify my wait and see with the quarterback play just overall, just because we haven't seen Penix much. We haven't seen him against a quality team, more or less. And like I said, Ramsey was okay, but we just don't know because we've had two quarterbacks for two different games, basically. So that was just that. But Nathan, that was a great segue. We had a question on Twitter from Steven asking, is Penix too fragile to play quarterback in the Big Ten at his age and development level? Question mark. I'm going to preface that by first, last year's injury is something you never know about. It happens to a lot of people. And then this year, I'll also say that we don't know necessarily what his injury is because they haven't said anything about it. And it's the same kind of thing like Jerome Hunter. You don't necessarily know what it is. And an injury doesn't necessarily, when they don't disclose anything, an injury doesn't necessarily have to mean, oh, he has a broken leg or he has a fractured this or a sprain that or something like that. It could be something that's a little more private. So you don't necessarily know what it is for sure. So I'm going to say, I mean, it definitely hasn't been good that he's been physically out for most of his entire career so far at Indiana, but I'm going to say no for right now, just because we don't know. We don't know if his injury last year is going to come up, and we don't know what this injury was particularly, so I can't say for sure. Do you agree or disagree, Matt?
No, I agree. I completely, we don't know what it is. We don't know what it was. There's nobody saying anything. And we don't know if it's going to be a reoccurring thing. So it's kind of like, it's up in the air. We'll wait and see.
For sure. And you're never going to see me call a football player fragile or soft or whatever.
Like, no, absolutely not.
I'm never going there. It's just, it's an unbelievable effort just to set your foot on the field. Look, sometimes injuries happen. I mean, that's just the way it is, especially in a physical game like football. So no, I don't think Penix is too fragile to play in the Big Ten. I think injuries happen and he'll recover from them, and then we'll see him play whenever he's available.
Yep. And I think Steven meant it as injury prone more instead of fragile.
Well, I don't think that's the case either, in all honesty.
Yes,
guys hit you and you're going to get hurt. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Michigan State. Game is this Saturday, the 28th, 3:30 p.m. on BTN. It is in East Lansing, the Indiana's very first game, or true road game this season, because they had Ball State, but it was sort of kind of a neutral site. So the first true road game, Saturday, 28th, ESPN Match Predictor, 14.4%. Do any of you guys remember what the spread was recently? It was like 14.5 or something. Yeah. The last I checked, Nathan will check. So far, Michigan State has beat Tulsa 28-7, beat Western Michigan 51-17, beat Northwestern this past weekend 31-10, and their one loss was a couple weeks ago to Arizona State 10-7. S&P Plus. Oh, those are our S&P Plus rankings, I think. They had Michigan State. Well, like we talked about a little earlier, Michigan State is 25th in the country right now, so Indiana gets another shot at a ranked opponent. I will move into the offense. I'll give some of my stuff, and then I'll see if you guys have anything to add. So QB, Brian Lewerke, nothing new. I've seen him before also. So far on the season, 1,025 passing yards, 7 TDs, 1 interception. Comparison, if you want to think about how Indiana's doing, both with Penix and Ramsey combined, they have 1,158 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So almost more or less the same thing. Almost the same passing yards, basically the exact same touchdowns, couple more interceptions. Running backs. I think this is where their offense is going to thrive. It's going to be through Elijah Collins. It's basically where they're going to make a lot of their money. Averages 5.9 yards per carry. He's broken for a 58-yard carry before. He's got 2 touchdowns on the season, so you see that he can break runs. A bigger kind of guy, and especially with the way the run defense has been playing recently for Indiana, this is a guy to watch out for and could probably will get over 100 yards on the game. You've got wide receiver. Basically, wide receiver is all Darrell Stewart Jr. Averages over 100 yards per game. Touchdowns are spread out, though, throughout all the receivers and the tight ends, which their tight ends, they use a lot. Both of the Matts, the Matt Saber and Matt Dotson, they like to use a lot, and they found...
they have a great name.
Yep, they do. So, got those receivers. Offensive line, they've only given up 4 total sacks, so you think about that 1 per game, and the defensive line for Indiana not doing too good. You can put 2 and 2 together possibly, but to compare, Indiana has only given up 5 sacks as well on the offensive line. So, overall, their offense struggles to move the ball consistently at times. So I think the biggest thing that Indiana is going to have to do is try and stop them and just keep moving their ball down the field on the other end. So their kicker has been struggling really hard, Michigan State's kicker. So if they can couple the stalling of the offense with making them kick field goals, I think they have a chance to outscore Michigan State. Nathan, add, subtract, take away, offense, Michigan State.
Yeah, so you asked about the spread, first of all. It did drop to 14 on the dot, so
nice.
Maybe a little bit more optimistic.
Trending in a positive direction.
And it'll change 5,000 times before Saturday.
And believe what you might, but maybe that's a hint at Michael Penix's availability, perhaps.
Whoa!
Oh, I don't want to start any rumors. Well, look, Michigan State is a bigger, has more questions on offense than they do on defense. So,
yes.
so their offense, you talked about Elijah Collins. He has emerged as a starting running back. Mark D'Antonio said it's kind of a handful balancing 4 or 5 different running backs, which he's trying to do. But Collins really emerged last week against MSU. They had a kid named Connor Hayward who was backing up LJ Scott last year. Hayward's basically resorted to the backup role now. So expect to see the kid Collins carry the ball most of the time for MSU. As I was saying, though, on their offensive line specifically, they do have some injuries. And this is a team that really did prefer sort of ground and pound football. We remember it way back with Le'Veon Bell, and it's kept going on really ever since. Kevin Jarvis is Michigan State's version of Coy Cronk. He's a guy who has NFL draft aspirations. He's an offensive lineman that started for them last year, and he's a highly regarded player, but he's out. He has a knee injury, and he's likely to miss months here for Michigan State. He's not officially out for the season, but he's not going to play against Indiana. Now, I've got a fun fact for all of you guys. So last year, Michigan State scored 5 touchdowns against Indiana. They won 35-21. All right, they've got one guy who scored 2 of those 5. His name's Jalen Naylor. He's a wide receiver. He's on the team this year, but he's out for the Indiana game due to injury. Okay, they have another tight end. No, you said Matt Dotson. Dotson, surprisingly, almost mysteriously, did not play against Northwestern last week. Folks aren't sure about his availability on Saturday. He's on the team, but he might not play against IU. There's a third guy who scored against IU last year for Michigan State named Shakur Brown. He's a corner, so he's on the defensive side, but he scored a pick 6. Brown is out against IU as well. The last guy left that scored a touchdown for Michigan State in that game was their kicker on a fake field goal, the kicker that you said was struggling a little bit this year. So of all the guys who scored last year against IU, and all those guys are on Michigan State's team this year, it seems like the only guy that's going to play is their kicker who scored on a fake field goal. So again,
4
all teams
straight missed field goals.
Yeah, and you asked us earlier about stuff we're confident in. Logan Justice has delivered time and time again. Now this is probably his biggest test of the year. East Lansing, it looks like there might be some precipitation in the forecast, but Justice is still one of the more reliable kickers in the conference, at least right now, if not the country, in all seriousness. So you look at different areas where IU might have the advantage. Michigan State's offense can definitely fall flat at times. They scored just 7 points against Arizona State, and that was at home. That was in East Lansing. So if IU's defense focuses, plays hard, and plays smart against Michigan State, they can keep them with some low numbers, which would obviously help IU's cause without question.
Yep. Matt?
Yeah, I agree with everything that has been said. I think you guys have stolen all my points from me. Just overarching view on Michigan State's offense, I'll make it quick. Brian Lewerke's going to get his yards and get his passes off. If you stop the
passing yards, not rushing yards.
Passing it. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. I was going into rushing. I was talking about passing yards. He was going to get his yards passing.
And he does not rush the ball.
Yes, he does. He can run, but he's not going to. Elijah Collins is the key. If we can stop the run, pack the box, trust our corners and our safeties to be able to cover these guys, and not give up the big play, which is a big if, since we were just talking about the defense giving up big plays and not being able to tackle. But I'm serious. If Elijah Collins starts ripping off 20-yard runs, it's over. It's toast. This needs to be a low-scoring game. And so in order to stop drives, you need to make them and force them into long second down situations. Make it 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8. Make sure you keep the first run whenever they're going to run on first down, because Mike D'Antonio is going to run on first down. So if you can make sure that first run is a 1 or 2 yard gain and not a 3 or a 4 yard gain, this game is going to be a lot harder for Michigan State. So getting Elijah Collins under the 70-yard rushing mark would be nice.
And cover Darryl Stewart. I'll add that to that because Lewerke is a decent quarterback. He can find receivers, and Darryl Stewart has so far been a monster. So if you cover Darryl Stewart, even if you double team him, and then 5, 6, 7 people cover Elijah Collins, then Indiana should be in good shape. So
they do have another receiver, Cody White, who can get
Cody
you
White
if you focus all your attention on Stewart. So they can hit you with a couple
some good receivers. Yes,
but remember the kid Naylor that I talked about earlier, he is out as well for this game. So Michigan State is a little bit shorthanded in that area.
Right.
Yep. All right, defense. And Matt, I'll let you go first after me so that you can get a couple points in.
Okay, good.
Michigan State.
All right. Michigan State's defense, I'm going to make this one quick. Their defensive line is nuts. They're so good. Also, they're very good at forcing turnovers. I think they had 3 interceptions last week against Northwestern.
Yeah, they've got 6 total turnovers on the season.
Correct. Right. So they force turnovers and they sack you a lot, which is not exactly what you want to hear about a defense that IU's offense is going up against. So that means we're going to have to get the ball quickly out of the quarterback's hand. Whoever's starting quarterback this week, the ball needs to be out of their hands quick. We don't want to give the defensive line enough time to get to the quarterback. 1, 2, anything above that, a play that is longer than 20 yards is appreciated, because Michigan State's defense does not give up long plays. So those are going to be at a premium. If we can get any long plays, any game-changing plays against the Michigan State defense, that will be obviously a game-changing play. We need those to happen, and we need those to happen in this game in order to have a shot. I think the game that they lost against Arizona State, the offense wasn't clicking, and still the defense only allowed 10, 13 points against Arizona State, an offense that's actually looked pretty decent through the first couple weeks out there in the Pac-12. So this is going to be one of the better defenses we play all year. It's going to be a tough time for the offense, and I'm really interested to see what Kalen DeBoer does play calling wise during this game. If he does, we were talking about earlier about the run, does he give up the run against a imposing defensive line, or does he continue to try to run the ball in order to keep the defense honest? So we'll see this game.
Yep. I'll amend my statement. I wrote it down as 6 interceptions. I just thought that was ridiculous. I thought it was 6 total turnovers. It was 6 interceptions. And the crazy part is it's been 6 interceptions by 6 different people too. It's not just one person being a rover. And 3 of those 6 interceptions have come from linebackers, and one of them is a defensive lineman too. So really only 2 of those interceptions out of those 6 have come from secondary players. So they're definitely getting hands up, and then also getting the ball as well. Just like you said about their defensive line, I'll just add into they are very good at stopping the run, as we have talked to a couple times on this show so far. Michigan State has only given up an average of 52.3 yards per game on the ground. Now, a lot of that is the stat is skewed just a little bit because Tulsa ran for, get ready for it, a negative 73 yards against Michigan State. They ran for a negative 73 yards against Michigan State. But anyway, even if you take that out, I can't do quick math, but it's still probably 60, 70, 75 yards per game, which is really good for a total, not just one player. That includes the quarterback running and everything. So like we've talked about, Stevie Scott, beat up offensive line, one of the nation's best defensive line, definitely the matchup that Indiana needs to at least try and not win, but at least not be terrible at. Their defense is good in the red zone. Actually, they can stop you in the red zone. So Indiana, if they get in the red zone, they have to definitely go for touchdowns. But if not, we've talked about Logan Justice being a guy that you can rely on right now. Talked about the secondary, a couple players to look out for. Joe Bachie Bacci, man.
Joe Bacci.
Linebacker, 40 total tackles this year so far.
Yep.
40 tackles in 4 games.
He had an
10
interception
a
and a
game.
sack last game as
Yeah,
well.
a sack and a half last game, I think,
Yeah.
too, or just 1 sack.
One sack.
And the next closest tackler, total tackles on the team is Antoine Simmons, another linebacker at 24. So it goes from 40 total tackles on the team to 24. So you really got to look out for Joe.
Joe's flying around the field.
Flying around the field, literally.
Sure. There was a fun story about Bocce. I was just reading up a little bit on Michigan State the last couple days. So Mark D'Antonio, right, smart defensive minded coach, obviously runs a solid team over there. Yeah. So he has, ever since he was an assistant for Nick Saban, I think about 20 years ago, he keeps a point system basically to evaluate how his players play each week. And he mentioned that a successful game for a defensive player is like 17 points. I guess you get points for tackles and being in the right spot, doing all that other thing.
Yeah.
So he said a good game for a defensive player is like 17 points. I think it's a very good game, actually. Bocce set a record for Mark D'Antonio's coaching tenure last week against Northwestern. D'Antonio said Bocce had 51 points against Northwestern. He had, like you said, he had a sack, he had an interception, he had 14 tackles or something. And even when he wasn't in the box score, he was doing the right thing. I think he had a big goal line stop as well against Northwestern. So, I mean, that guy is the key player on this Michigan State defense. Yes. And also another standout player on their defensive line is Kenny Willekes.
I was going to get there.
Watch out for him, especially with IU's offensive line concerns.
Sure.
Interrupted we with the story, and then you stole the player. I see what you were doing.
He's got to get his points in.
Yeah, he's got to get his points in. But yeah,
I apologize.
But like you said, against Northwestern, that's also still a Power 5 Big Ten team, even though they're not the team that everyone thought they'd be this year. That's still against a pretty good team compared to what some of the other football programs are in the FBS. But just like Nathan said, Kenny Willekes, D end, 4 total sacks, 22 tackles so far. So again, he's the key on that really good defensive lineman. But that defensive lineman, as we keep coming back to, if you hear us on repeat, basically 15 sacks so far in 4 games. 15 sacks in 4 games. It's over 3 per game. So really, again, as it usually comes down to most weeks, definitely a lot of the battles are going to be won or lost up in the trenches. Nathan, anything to clean up with?
I think at the end of the day, we had touched on Logan Justice once or twice, but I've said before, especially in these big time matchups, field goals get you fired. You've got to score touchdowns. 4th and 2, 4th and 3, go for it. I mean, the weather should cooperate for the most part in East Lansing on Saturday. It won't be one of those hellish kind of wintry type days in Michigan. So, I
hope not.
They're definitely, it's definitely case by case situation type of thing. But unless it's a real obvious kicking situation, you're gonna have to score. You're not gonna get too many chances to score, so you really have to maximize them when you get those.
That's
especially for Indiana. Yeah,
those are the tortured words of a Bears fan right there.
Unbelievable.
More or less, I think my overall thoughts on this, and I say this, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but that's always followed by something slightly like that. But nothing particularly scares me with this Michigan State team. And I just think they're half a level above Indiana in a lot of aspects. So I think they're still going to win it that way. But it's not like I mean that more as Ohio State, you're like, oh, there's Justin Fields, J.K. Dobbins. Like those are the guys that actually scare you. The only thing that I could see even relatively getting close to that is their defensive line that we've talked about. But that's even a thing that I think Indiana is at least capable of stopping or at least minimizing. And so again, I think nothing particularly scares me with this team. I can get your quick thoughts on this as we wrap up to where Indiana can get a victory. It's not like Ohio State where they can, but really they can't. But now this is food for thought. Actually, I'll leave this at the very end after this little tidbit, but after I hear your thoughts. So, does anything scare you, or has your mind changed from a win or a loss, Matt?
No, like I said, I don't think Stevie Scott's going to get 3.5 yards a carry, so therefore I'm going to say this is a loss. One quick thought on Michigan State as a whole. When you're looking for the future of the IU program, look at Michigan State. I think we're very much, and Tom Allen's very much building the program in the same way that Michigan State was trying to build. Like, we're not going to have world class. Like, we're not going to have Ohio State level skill players, but we're going to have guys that you can count on that can play well. We're going to have really good running backs thanks to Mike Hart. Have a quarterback can make all the throws, just like Lewerke can for Michigan State. And then our team is going to be built around a stout, tough, good tackling. Well, it should be good tackling defense that has a really good scheme and buys into it. So that's what Michigan State is, and it's what they've prided themselves on. It's what they've won Big Ten championships on, and that's what we're trying to do with IU, and Tom Allen's trying to do with them. So yeah, that's Michigan State.
Quickly. Thoughts changed, yes or no, Nathan, on this game specifically?
I think it's going to be a close game. I think it'll come down to the end. The funny thing is I think that Michigan State kicker, Matt Coughlin, that you talked about, I think he's going to actually make a big one at the end to help Michigan State win by 3 or so points.
He's going to run down the field strumming the guitar.
Yeah, he might. But, you talked about S&P. We talked about it briefly. Michigan State has the number 1 ranked defense in the country right now, but their offense is 87. Their special teams isn't all that good either. So if you can score, that makes this game interesting. IU's going to have to score at least 24 to win.
Quick thoughts. Yes, no, then a very, very small sentence. Have your thoughts changed on this Indiana team after the first 4 games? I will say no, yes, and no. Most specifics have changed where I think I didn't necessarily think the offensive line would be like this even before the Coy Cronk injury, but no, overall I still think they're still capable of getting 5 to 6 and probably 6 wins. Matt, yes, no.
No, I said 4 wins. I'm still banking on it. 4 wins.
Even though you projected 5 wins when we did our episode.
Okay, 4 or 5 wins. Sorry.
No, let's get into Big Ten play. Obviously played Ohio State, but now full-time Big Ten football. Let's see how it goes.
Good, and we don't have to be like that one annoying person on Twitter that was like, no, Indiana still sucks, and they always have sucked. But I'll leave you with this thought, just some food for thought as we go into Saturday. Michigan State is coming off of a dominating and very, very much needed victory against Northwestern. But they're also coming off of a record-setting game with D'Antonio now being the winningest coach in Michigan State program history, where they wanted to throw the water coolers on him, but they let the water in the Gatorade out before they could actually do that. This game against Indiana is coming off of that big victory, program-setting victory. Got Indiana. Then you've got at Ohio State, at Wisconsin, home against Penn State. You just got in the top 25. All I can say is trap game, ?
Could be.
And that about wraps it up for our 107th episode of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you guys so much for joining us, especially those on the chat. I forgot to give a shout out to Andrew. He was giving stats like the Spartans defense has only given up just 1.71 yards per rush, which is the second least in the country behind Wisconsin at 1.29. So shout out to him for coming on and listening and participating. Indiana HQ contributor. But thank you all for coming out, especially if you listen to this. We really appreciate your support. We will be back next Monday for another edition of the Hoosier Sound Off. News and updates come through Twitter, so subscribe to our show so you don't miss any of our weekly episodes. Most importantly, if you enjoy our show, we grow this podcast by leaving reviews on iTunes or Facebook and telling a friend, sharing our links. That's really how we grow this podcast, so we can reach all those passionate IU fans such as yourself. But, as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.